What's up, Digilogue fam? It's Felicia here. Today we have the opportunity to chat with Drea Rèal, who is a singer-songwriter from South Florida. I'm super excited to just learn more about her journey. So thank you for being here, Drea.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Awesome. So I wanted to first congratulate you on having your music recently featured on Adult Swim's Opus, which is a compilation of up-and-coming female artists who kind of come from a variety of genres: electronic, indie rock, alternative. So can you just start off by telling us how that opportunity came about? It's really big.
Yes, I think it was just a full circle, like universal, like God moment, because I ended up getting in touch with somebody that I knew in middle school, and I hadn't talked to them literally in 10 years or something like extensive like that. And she found my Instagram, and her name is Anka Vlasan. She's a writer for Adult Swim, and she couldn't believe that I was into music, and she was also in like the entertainment lane, and she just dove into my work and she really connected with it, and she pitched it for me, and that's exactly how it happened.
Wow.
So super, super dope. It was an amazing affirmation, honestly.
Yeah. So for those that are not familiar with who Drea Rèal, the artist, is, can you talk a little bit more about how you got your start in music?
Yes. Okay. So a Colombian American artist, I like to say, because I was born in Colombia, but I'm very much Americanized. I've lived here basically all my life. I got started in music through I call him like my music partner. His name is Kimani, and I founded my own label with him, Soul Records, I think back in 2018. And again, just one of those things that it was just kind of fate. Like I kept pushing him away because at the time in my life, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But all my life, I knew I wanted to just be influential, like be in art, be in music. And he just started sending me beats. And then I just so happened to stumble onto a studio as well at the time. And I recorded Into, which was like my first single. And it just kind of kept building from there. And I knew I had a learning curve, especially with so many peers that are honestly almost even born into music sometimes. Like they grew up around it. I didn't grow up around those things. Like, so I definitely just adopted like a new identity when I decided on this path, and it's just been on my life ever since. So that's kind of how it happened.
That's a really cool story. And so you mentioned being from, originally being born in Colombia, but being raised in South Florida. How have both of those communities kind of shaped you musically?
Well, I would say it's just made me connected to like so many things, even though things don't seem cohesive in terms of like all the aspects of my identity, like they make sense to me. So sometimes I feel like a little scattered, but I think that adds to like who I am. Coming into like this year, I think everyone's gonna see the influence of my culture more than ever, because I'm about to cross over into Latin music. So I'm currently working on a Latin project. Growing up in South Florida, it's synonymous to being in your country because like the Latin culture is insane out here. And I actually spent some time in Virginia. I used to live out there, so that was a super dope culture shock as well. So I just think it's just being immersed in so many cultures and being able to adapt. So I would just say that it's influenced me in the sense that I can just adapt into different things. And even though I resonate with so many aspects of myself, like it still ties into my identity. You could be from different places and like different things, even though they don't make sense.
Right. And you talked earlier about having like that learning curve, not having really a strong influence of music, within your family, but was it something in your community that kind of pulled you into that direction of music? Like, what was it?
I literally have a moment. Yes, absolutely. Well, one, it's all the producers thus far that have taken a chance on me, that have believed in me, that have built with me. I've been so blessed with just the relationships that I have for people to engineer me, teach me how to record myself, like the art of songwriting. But I have this one specific moment. It was my first Art Basel in Miami, and I got booked to open up with some really dope acts, and I had never performed in Miami, or maybe I did, but this one was just so special. Like it was, I just remember like so many underground artists that night, and it was just so magical. And that's just what kind of sparked it for me, because I realized like, yo, people really live this. Like at the time I was working at a restaurant. I'm sure you know, like if you're an artist and you have a day job, you're grinding, like it's a split life. It's such a split life because you have to put a different face on to be, you know, to live conventionally. And then being an artist is such like a radical notion that it's just a different mentality. But I was so inspired that it just lit up something in me to just not doubt myself. Like you could do who you want to be. It doesn't matter if you weren't born into this, like you choose it and you just go after it and it's yours.
That's actually like a really non-traditional story, because often you hear people, you know, having a really strong music influence in their family. So that's really interesting. So in 2018, you released your debut single, Into, which you talked about a little bit earlier, and it amassed over 30,000 streams, landed you the attention from New York, LA, and Las Vegas, where you were actually able to perform. How did that song come about?
That song, it came about, it was to this day, like I would say just the most raw take, because the beautiful thing about not being trained in technicality is that you could go off of instinct so much. And I actually envy like the earlier version of myself that didn't question, you know, the technicality and things. So it just literally came about because I was in a terrible relationship and I was meeting somebody else in the middle of like getting over this chaotic relationship. And then the new person that I had in my life, like still, it just wasn't clicking for me and it wasn't resonating. And Into was just me talking to kind of both people at the same time. Like, you don't do it for me, you don't do it for me. So, and I know who I am, so I'm gonna just have to do it for myself. And it just was talking about a love that I wanted so much and I couldn't find anywhere. And it came about in 10 minutes. I just wrote it out and I recorded it the next day. Kimani went crazy and we followed through with it.
Wow. That's actually deep. Like the story behind it's really deep. So after your debut single, you actually released an EP called Eclipse. Scars, a single on the project, earned a Spotify placement and has been streamed over 150,000 times in like 40 countries. You know, how did the success of that song kind of change your path or change your trajectory in music?
It definitely humbled me actually, because at the time, like I feel like we have this disillusion, like when we come into, I guess, the game, like we think, oh, if this one thing goes viral, like that's it, like fly me out, or you know, like I get to quit my job. And I remember seeing those numbers, we were freaking out because you could see it live time on Spotify, really like how many people are listening at that very moment or how many playlists it's getting placed on. And when it hit those numbers, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this gonna lead to? What it doesn't lead to the next thing unless you have something to follow up with it.
Right.
So I learned that, you know, a single reaches a metric that's admirable and I'm grateful for, it's not life changing. Like you need to find a way to make that part of the formula so you can keep replicating it. Or the fact that there's so many songs daily that sometimes people could just know you're that doesn't mean that it compels them to go search for you. But I did get a lot of people go from playlists to my Instagram and let me know like, hey, this song got me through a breakup. So just seeing like those connections or people going out of their way to find me like was a beautiful thing. And it humbled me, but it also gave me so much hope to just be able to like recreate like the success of that single again. So it just pushed me to go on.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, because I think a lot of artists do make this assumption that like if they have a really, really good single that's really successful, like that's it. But oftentimes it's not the case. And you know, when you're let down in that sense, sometimes it causes you to kind of stay stagnant. So that's awesome advice. You have this really like mysterious and edgy sound. What other qualities do you think sets you apart from other artists that are in the same genre?
I would just say like who I am and my life, because you know, there's always going to be somebody just as talented as you. There's always going to be people more talented than you that are going to push you to go even further. I would just say just my identity and like what I've lived through, like you replicate that, like no one can replicate my story. So that's what I would say.
Okay. And so you talked about it earlier, but performing in Miami, you actually opened up for 24 hours in 2018 at the Art Basel.
That's the Art Basel I was talking about.
Yeah. And so what was that experience like?
Oh man, it was just so dope. Like to this day, it's one of my favorite shows, like because of the dedication that I felt towards it. That year after that show, that's when I started curating my own shows. So it just became like very like a hustle for me, and it became very second nature to get ready for shows. But the magic and like the nervousness that I felt for that show, like those emotions that I had, they were so genuine, and the effort that I put in that show was so genuine because I got a band together. We practiced for a week and a half. It was just really, really beautiful. I remember also like that was one of those pay your dues kind of moment, because I it was one of those situations that I had to buy a certain amount of tickets and resell them again. And I was able to sell them all, which I was very grateful for. And that's what inspired me to start my own label as well with Kimani, because I was kind of tired of, you know, the middleman situation or artists having to pay for slots when they're the ones bringing in people. And it was just a night full of like realizations, and it was one of my favorite performances still.
Yeah, and like after that, you ended up headlining your own show there. So how was that experience different than opening up for an artist?
Man, it's a lot more pressure. I'm not gonna lie, it's so much pressure. And coming from like the curating standpoint, it's one of those things that you have to be able to like have those simultaneous identities at once, like make sure everything is good, but make sure that when you hit the stage, like you're able to give it your all as well. But it was so fulfilling, like to know that, you know, a group of people can make something like that happen. Like it doesn't need to be high budget. All you need is a community of people. So the transition from opening up for people to headlining my own shows, like with my friends, like that was the most fulfilling like aspects of like that year for me. Honestly, 2019 was super lit.
Wow, yeah. And you recently dropped an amazing visual for your new single, Oblivion. It's both sensual and fiery. Tell us more about the single, because it's a lot to unpack, both in the single and the visual.
Oblivion, man, yeah. It was one of those records that I knew it would just take hella effort to make it happen and deliver it the way that it was delivered. And I took my time with it more than I have with any other song, even with the production. The main producer that I work with that produced the album that I'm gonna be dropping in Spanish and English, he actually produced 10 versions of the song Oblivion. And that's what it took for us to come to a consensus to be like, okay, this is it. And it was just a lot of work. And it was the first time that I outsourced for a creative director. So I feel like it was just very elevated in terms of artistry. And I hope it came off as, you know, conceptual. And, you know, I just hope I delivered, because I did put in a lot of work with that. So thank you for recognizing.
Yeah, the visuals fire. I'm talking like down to the costume.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of was very cohesive. So definitely shout out to you, everyone. Definitely stream, watch Oblivion on YouTube. It's dope.
Thank you.
So what other projects are you working on this year?
Oh my gosh, yeah, the Spanish EP that I was talking about is probably like my baby at this point. It's actually like a year and a half to 2 years in the making, because I had to take a pause because of quarantine, because it's a lot of up-tempo music associated with it, and I just wanted to just wait for the right time. And now that I finally get to this point, like it's just something that I've been like super patient with, and something that I'm just so incredibly proud of, because it's a side of me that I've never tapped into. And it's just music that I just stand behind so strongly. It just feels like undeniable to me. Like there's certain times that you move forward with something and you may second guess it, but then there's other times that you just have like an undeniable sense of conviction. And that's how I feel about the music that I have yet to drop.
Right. And so you also talked a little bit about Soul Records, and you said you were the co-founder. Just tell us a little bit more about the label, because I know you said it's artist driven. So are you looking for other people to join? Like, what's that look like?
Well, I think it's more of a showcasing platform at this point. Like, it's a label for the purposes of the people that are behind it. I hope and envision and pray for one day to just have the resources to absolutely bring on more artists. And I feel like it's a community in itself now, you know, like no one is out here like repping it only, but there's so many people that are like, yeah, I've been a part of Soul Era Records. We have like repeating artists. I've cultivated so many incredible friendships through it. And I use it like just to make people make me take me seriously, you know, because as a woman and just as an artist, like sometimes I get like just really frustrating. So having that buffer to just, you know, up that perception like has helped so much. So I just use it for myself and Kimani, and then we use the rest of the platform to just showcase as many artists as possible.
That's awesome. That's really dope.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to see what you continue to do with the label. What's your ultimate goal for 2021? We had a crazy 2020. It was great in some aspects because it gave us some time to think and really like focus on our goals. But what's your ultimate goal for 2021?
Man, to just stop stalling on myself, to just not hold back anymore on myself, like to really give like the world or my world, the people that I have access to, like everything that I got. And that goes with like living my life and presenting the world on the internet. And I just want my music to just hit like never before.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for stopping by and talking with us today. We support, you know, everything that you're doing as far as your music career, what you're doing with the label. And I look forward to seeing everything you have awesome like planned this year. So let the community know where they can stream your music.
Yes. My name is Drea Rèal. You can find me at Drea Rèal Music on any social media, and on all platforms is Drea Rèal. And I want to thank you guys honestly for just researching like the work that I've done so far and making me feel like so recognized and seen. So thank you guys.